66 million years ago, our world was a very different place. It was a green, vibrant planet, ruled not by us, but by giants. This was the age of the dinosaurs, a reign that had lasted for an astonishing 150 million years. Imagine, if you will, vast, humid forests stretching across the continents, filled with ferns as tall as houses and trees that touched the sky. The air was thick with the sounds of life, the calls of strange creatures, and the heavy, earth-shaking footsteps of the largest animals ever to walk the land. These magnificent creatures were masters of their domain, a testament to the sheer power and diversity of life. In these ancient ecosystems, life thrived in countless forms. The mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex, with its powerful jaws and teeth like daggers, was the apex predator of its time, a hunter of immense strength and presence. Long-necked sauropods, gentle giants like the Argentinosaurus, browsed peacefully on the tops of the tallest trees, their immense bodies moving slowly through the primeval landscape. Smaller, feathered dinosaurs scurried through the undergrowth, while great winged pterosaurs, with leathery wings spanning many meters, soared through the warm skies above. The seas, too, were filled with colossal marine reptiles, like the fearsome Mosasaurus. It was a world of breathtaking scale and wonder. The dinosaurs had adapted to fill every imaginable niche. There were herbivores and carnivores, giants and creatures no bigger than a modern chicken. Some were covered in tough, scaly skin, while others sported primitive feathers, hinting at the future of their descendants. They laid eggs in carefully constructed nests, raising their young with a level of care we are only just beginning to understand. For millions upon millions of years, this intricate and balanced world continued, seemingly forever. It felt as though their kingdom would have no end, a permanent feature of our planet's long and storied history. But the universe is a place of immense and unpredictable power. While the dinosaurs went about their lives, hunting, grazing, and raising their young, a silent threat was traveling through the vast, empty darkness of space. It was a colossal rock, an asteroid nearly 10 kilometers wide, hurtling towards our planet on a collision course. Its journey had begun millions of years earlier, and now it was nearing its final, cataclysmic destination. The inhabitants of Earth were completely unaware that their world, and the very course of life itself, was about to be changed forever in a single devastating moment. The day it arrived began like any other in the late Cretaceous period. And then, the sky was torn apart. The asteroid, traveling at a speed almost too fast to comprehend, slammed into the shallow seas of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact was cataclysmic, releasing more energy than 1 billion atomic bombs combined. In an instant, a brilliant, blinding flash of light brighter than the sun vaporized the asteroid and a vast chunk of the Earth's crust. This impact carved a crater over 180 kilometers wide and sent a shockwave of unimaginable force pulsing through the planet, a seismic shudder that would have registered on every continent. The immediate effect was a fireball of superheated rock and gas that expanded outwards from the impact site at incredible speed. This scorching wave of heat incinerated everything in its path for thousands of kilometers, turning lush forests into ash in a matter of seconds. Any living creature caught in this thermal blast would have been vaporized instantly. The sheer force of the impact also triggered earthquakes of a magnitude we can scarcely imagine, shaking the very foundations of the planet. These tremors would have been felt across the globe, causing continents to ripple and triggering volcanic eruptions far from the initial point of contact. From the ocean, the impact created a tsunami of truly epic proportions. A wall of water, perhaps hundreds of meters high, surged outwards from the Gulf of Mexico. It crashed onto the coastlines of North and South America with unstoppable force, sweeping miles inland and obliterating entire coastal ecosystems. The wave would have traveled across the ancient oceans, reaching distant shores hours or even days later, bringing destruction to coastlines thousands of kilometers away. The world's oceans, once teeming with life, were churned into a chaotic, debris-filled maelstrom, a scene of utter devastation. But the destruction was far from over. The impact ejected trillions of tons of pulverized rock, dust, and sulfur into the atmosphere. This material was blasted high above the clouds, some of it even reaching space, before gravity began to pull it back down. As these tiny particles of rock re-entered the atmosphere all around the world, they heated up due to friction, turning the sky into a global broiler. The heavens themselves seemed to be on fire as glowing embers rained down, igniting widespread wildfires on every continent. The world was now burning, a planet engulfed in flames. After the initial firestorm, a new and perhaps even more sinister phase of the extinction began. The immense cloud of dust, soot from the global wildfires, and sulfur aerosols remained suspended high in the atmosphere. This thick, impenetrable blanket of debris began to spread, carried by stratospheric winds, until it enveloped the entire planet. Slowly but surely, the sunlight was blocked out. Day turned into a perpetual twilight, and then into a profound and chilling darkness. The sun, the source of all energy for life on Earth, was hidden from view, plunging the world into a cold and seemingly endless night. This planetary darkness had a catastrophic effect on life. Photosynthesis, the fundamental process by which plants convert sunlight into energy, ground to a halt. Without light, plants and phytoplankton, the microscopic organisms that form the base of the marine food web, began to wither and die on a massive scale. The lush green forests that had covered the continents turned brown and decayed. The oceans, once vibrant with microscopic life, became barren. The very foundation of almost every food chain on the planet was systematically collapsing, heralding a period of unprecedented starvation. With the sun's warmth blocked, global temperatures plummeted. The planet, which had been a warm, greenhouse world, was plunged into a deep freeze. This impact winter brought frigid conditions to even the most tropical regions. Temperatures on land may have dropped by as much as 25 degrees Celsius, creating a harsh, unforgiving environment for the creatures that had survived the initial blast. Rivers and lakes froze over, and the once balmy climate that the dinosaurs and other creatures were adapted to simply vanished, replaced by a bitter, relentless cold that lasted for years. The atmosphere itself became toxic. The vaporized rock from the impact site was rich in sulfur, which reacted with water in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid. This then fell back to Earth as acid rain, poisoning the soil, rivers, and oceans. The rain would have been corrosive enough to burn the leaves of any surviving plants, and to drastically alter the chemistry of the water, making it hostile to marine life. The world was now not only dark and cold, but also drenched in acid. It was an environment that seemed utterly incapable of supporting complex life. In this dark, cold, and poisoned world, the Great Dying began in earnest. The collapse of the food chains was swift and brutal. The large herbivores, the plant-eating dinosaurs that had roamed the plains and forests in their millions, were the first to suffer. With the plants they depended on gone, they starved to death. Their immense size, once a great advantage, now became a fatal weakness. They required huge amounts of food to survive, and in this barren new world, there was simply nothing left for them to eat. The gentle giants of the Cretaceous were no more. With the herbivores gone, the great carnivores soon followed. The mighty Tyrannosaurus rex and other fearsome predators deprived of their prey were also doomed to starvation. Their reign of terror was over, not in a grand battle, but in a slow, desperate search for food that no longer existed. Across the globe, the story was the same. The dinosaurs, which had dominated the planet for over 150 million years, were vanishing. From the largest sauropod to the smallest raptor, their time was up. They were simply too big, too specialized, and too dependent on a stable environment that had been violently shattered. The extinction was not limited to the land. In the oceans, the devastation was just as complete. The death of the phytoplankton caused the entire marine food web to unravel. The giant marine reptiles, like the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, who hunted in the once teeming seas, found their food sources disappearing. They too starved, their massive bodies sinking to the ocean floor for the last time. Ammonites, the shelled creatures that had been abundant in the oceans for millions of years, were wiped out completely. It is estimated that around 75% of all species on Earth disappeared in this mass extinction event. This was the end of an era. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event was a profound reset button for life on Earth. It was a line drawn in the geological sand, separating the age of reptiles from what was to come. The world was left empty, a ghost of its former self. The thunderous footsteps of the dinosaurs fell silent forever, leaving a void of immense proportions. But in the midst of this overwhelming destruction, in the shadows of the dying world, some creatures clung to life. Their survival was the key to the future. While the giants perished, the small and the meek inherited the earth. Not all life was extinguished. In the nooks and crannies of the devastated world, survivors endured. These were creatures that, through a combination of luck, adaptability, and modest needs, were able to weather the storm. Among them were our distant ancestors, small, shrew-like mammals. They were nocturnal, burrowing creatures, used to living in the shadows of the dinosaurs. Their small size meant they needed far less food to survive, and their burrowing habits may have protected them from the worst of the initial heat blast and the subsequent cold. These early mammals were not alone. Many insects, shielded in their larval stages or protected in soil and rotting wood, managed to survive. Their ability to eat decaying matter meant they had a food source when fresh plants were gone. Many freshwater turtles and crocodilians also made it through. Their semi-aquatic lifestyles and slower metabolisms allowed them to endure long periods with little food in the poisoned rivers and lakes. And in the skies, a remarkable group of survivors took flight, the birds. They were, in fact, the direct descendants of a group of feathered dinosaurs, the only branch of that great family to survive the cataclysm. The key to survival was often diet. Creatures that were not picky eaters stood the best chance. Generalists who could scavenge on the dead, eat insects, or consume seeds and roots buried in the soil could find sustenance in the barren landscape. Specialists, on the other hand, who relied on a single type of food, were quickly wiped out. The ability to hibernate or enter a state of torpor would have also been a significant advantage, allowing animals to wait out the worst of the impact winter while conserving precious energy. Life, it seemed, clung on at the margins. And so, in the quiet aftermath of the apocalypse, a new world began to take shape. The planet was no longer the domain of titans. The ecological niches that had been occupied by the dinosaurs for millions of years were now empty. It was a quiet, desolate planet, but it was also a world of opportunity. For the small, furry creatures that had scurried under the feet of giants, their time had finally come. The stage was set for a new act in the grand play of life, one that would be dominated by a new class of animals. As the dust slowly settled and sunlight began to filter through the atmosphere once more, the world began to heal. The impact winter gradually subsided, and temperatures started to rise. With the return of sunlight, the surviving plants, starting with hardy ferns and mosses, began to recolonize the scarred landscape. This fern spike, which is visible in the fossil record, marks the first stage of recovery, as a green fuzz slowly spread across the continents. For the surviving animals, this was a sign of hope. The long night was ending, and a new dawn was breaking for life on Earth. With the dinosaurs gone, the world was an open frontier for the mammals. They emerged from their burrows and hiding places into a world free from the giant predators that had hunted them for so long. For the first time, it was safe for them to explore during the day. This was a pivotal moment. The removal of the dinosaurs was the single most important event that allowed for the diversification and rise of mammals. They were no longer confined to a life in the shadows. They could now step into the light and claim the empty world as their own. Without competition, the mammals began to multiply and diversify at an incredible rate. This period, known as the Paleocene, saw an explosion of new mammalian forms. From their small, insect-eating ancestors, they rapidly evolved to fill the ecological roles left vacant. Some began to eat the newly growing plants, becoming the first large mammalian herbivores. Others became predators, hunting the other mammals. They were adapting, changing, and growing, seizing every opportunity the new world presented. This was the beginning of the Cenozoic era, better known as the Age of Mammals. Over the next few million years, this evolutionary burst continued. Mammals began to grow larger, developing new features and behaviors. Some returned to the water, evolving into the ancestors of whales and dolphins. Others took to the trees, developing grasping hands and feet, becoming the first primates. A few even developed wings, becoming bats and conquering the night sky. The planet was being repopulated, and this time, it was our furry, warm-blooded relatives who were in charge. The world was being remade in their image. The Age of Mammals was a time of extraordinary evolutionary experimentation. As the millions of years passed, the climate stabilized, and lush forests and grasslands spread across the continents. In this bountiful world, mammals grew to enormous sizes, echoing the giants of the dinosaur era. There were creatures like the Paraceratherium, a hornless rhinoceros that was the largest land mammal ever to live, standing nearly 5 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 20 tons. These giants browsed on the high branches of trees, much like the sauropods before them, a remarkable example of convergent evolution. The predators, too, grew to fearsome proportions. In South America, which was an isolated island continent for much of this time, giant terror birds with massive axe-like beaks became the apex predators. In North America and Eurasia, saber-toothed cats, like the famous Smilodon, evolved dagger-like canine teeth to hunt the large herbivores that roamed the plains. There were giant ground sloths, armadillos the size of small cars called glyptodon, and immense mammoths and mastodons with curving tusks that roamed the cold northern steppes during the ice ages. It was a world populated by a spectacular menagerie of mammalian giants. This era was not static. It was a dynamic period of constant change. Continents continued to drift, mountain ranges rose, and the climate fluctuated between warm periods and cold ice ages. These changes drove evolution forward, forcing species to adapt or perish. Grasslands expanded, favoring fast-running grazers with teeth adapted for chewing tough grasses. The ice ages forced many animals to develop thick fur coats and other adaptations to the cold. This constant environmental pressure sculpted the diversity of mammalian life we see today, from the smallest mouse to the largest whale. And among the branches of the trees, a particularly significant group of mammals was quietly evolving. These were the primates. They had developed forward-facing eyes for depth perception, which was crucial for judging leaps from branch to branch. They had grasping hands and feet with opposable thumbs, allowing them to hold onto limbs securely and manipulate objects. These adaptations for a life in the trees would, by a remarkable twist of fate, provide the essential toolkit for a future descendant that would one day leave the forest and take its first steps onto the open savanna. In the vast, verdant forests of Africa, our own story began. Around 6 to 7 million years ago, a group of apes began to diverge from the line that would lead to modern chimpanzees. Climate change was once again the driving force. The dense forests began to shrink, replaced by open woodlands and vast, grassy savannas. This new environment presented both challenges and opportunities. For some of these apes, the path forward was not in the trees, but on the ground. They began to spend more time walking on two legs, a revolutionary adaptation known as bipedalism. Walking upright freed the hands. These early hominins, such as Ardipithecus and later Australopithecus, of which the famous fossil Lucy is an example, could now use their hands to carry food, tools, and their young. This was a monumental shift. It allowed them to forage more efficiently and travel greater distances across the open landscape. Their brains were still relatively small, not much larger than a chimpanzee's, but this crucial first step onto 2 feet set our ancestors on a completely new evolutionary trajectory, a path that would ultimately lead to us. Over the next few million years, a remarkable transformation occurred. Faced with the challenges of savanna life, our ancestors' brains began to grow larger and more complex. Around 2.5 million years ago, a new genus, Homo, appeared. Species like Homo habilis, the handyman, began to craft simple stone tools. These were not just objects. They were ideas made real, used to butcher carcasses and smash bones for marrow. This technological innovation gave them access to new, energy-rich food sources, which in turn fueled the continued growth of the brain. The feedback loop between tools, diet, and brain size had begun. Later species, like Homo erectus, became even more sophisticated. They created more advanced tools, controlled fire, and were the first of our ancestors to venture out of Africa, spreading across Asia and Europe. They were taller, more human-like, and had brains that were significantly larger than their predecessors. The ability to control fire was a game changer. It provided warmth, protection from predators, a way to cook food, making it easier to digest and unlocking more nutrients, and a social focal point for the group. Humanity was taking shape, forged in the crucible of the African savanna. From these ancient beginnings, our own species, Homo sapiens, emerged in Africa around 300,000 years ago. We were distinguished by an even larger, more complex brain, housed in a high, rounded skull. This brain gave us an unprecedented capacity for abstract thought, language, and creativity. We developed sophisticated tools, created art, and formed complex social bonds. Around 70,000 years ago, we began our own great migration out of Africa, spreading across the globe at a remarkable pace. We encountered other human species, like the Neanderthals, and eventually became the last human species left on the planet. This journey across the world was a testament to our adaptability. We learned to survive in every environment, from the frozen Arctic tundra to the dense Amazon rainforest. We developed agriculture, which allowed us to settle in one place and build permanent villages, towns, and eventually sprawling cities. This led to the rise of civilizations, with complex governments, laws, and monumental architecture. We developed writing to record our history, science to understand the universe, and art to express our deepest emotions. In a geological blink of an eye, we transformed the planet. Today, as we look up at the night sky, it is humbling to reflect on the long, improbable journey that led to this moment. Our existence is a direct consequence of that cataclysmic day 66 million years ago. Without the asteroid impact, the dinosaurs would likely still rule the world, and our small, shrew-like ancestors would still be scurrying in the shadows. The extinction of the dinosaurs was not just an end, it was a beginning. It cleared the way for the age of mammals, which in turn set the stage for the evolution of primates, and ultimately, for us. The story of life on Earth is one of profound transformation, of destruction and renewal, of resilience and chance. From the fiery end of one world came the dawn of another. The silence left by the dinosaurs was eventually filled with the sounds of our own making, our languages, our music, our machines. We are the inheritors of a planet shaped by cosmic collisions and evolutionary wonders. Understanding this deep history connects us to every living thing and to the very fabric of the planet itself. It is a powerful reminder that life is tenacious, that change is the only constant, and that from the greatest endings can come the most extraordinary new beginnings.